artist management. Stephen LaBrie, welcome. How are you doing today?
Doing good. How are you?
I'm great. So this is the very first live stream for Voice Talks. I'm hoping this goes well, but you know, the with first times are typically plagued with technical issues, but so far so good, I think. Um,
Yep.
so tell me what you have been up to this year. I was reading your bio, and you won the George London competition, right? Top prize.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Was that your first top prize in a major competition in your career?
I've won top prizes before. I think, the thing is my competition career has been like kind of sporadic. So, I've not like done them all in one foul swoop. I've just kind of like gotten some awards, then taken a break, gotten some awards, taken a break. So it's like the first top prize that I've gotten in a while, I guess, because I haven't really done any competitions in a couple of years since before that.
Uh-huh. So I noticed as well you've been competing and seeing success in competitions, large and small, since 2006 or 7. Is that right? You've been sort
Yeah,
of,
I started really early.
yeah. That's, I mean, but it just shows you were one of those talented little chaps that that just got out there and people seem to love. Now I've seen, you around doing big things on Facebook, but I had never actually heard you until about a week ago, and it was through your website. I was just, I wanted more baritones for this project, and um, your name's constantly in my feed from either a friend of a friend or so forth, and I was so impressed. Like it, I don't know why it's surprising to me, but every time I hear like a new emerging artist, it's incredible how it's not just a talent. It's like the charisma you show in your performances, that I saw in the videos online, the technical control that you have over your voice, the evenness of beauty of tone. Beauty is never sacrificed, whether you're at the extreme top of your range or the very low end of your range. Whereas in baritones, it's very common to see like a one or the other, unless you're a really great baritone. And so, as
Hmm.
someone who's your age, um, I think it was just quite impressive to see. So, what I want to get into, like your technical journey and your upbringing as a singer, and it might be helpful to give everyone an idea of, where did you grow up, what was your musical background, when did you decide you first wanted to be a singer?
Well, I grew up in Dallas, Texas, and I went to the Dallas Opera used to have this amazing outreach program where they would do they would bring all of the schools in the district to the Dallas Opera to see a performance, and it wasn't like dumbed down in any way. It was full costume, full orchestra, with great singers, and the first performance I saw was La Boheme. And so that was in fifth grade, and then I loved it from there on. And I just always loved singing, and I love practicing. So I would like go home, when after school when no one was home, my brother wasn't home, my mother wasn't home, and I would sing and sing and sing and sing and sing until I heard the garage door open, and then I would like stop, because I was embarrassed. And so I, when I was in high school, I was just like, I started taking voice lessons and stuff like that. And I actually, I went to AVA, the Academy of Vocal Arts in Philadelphia, really early on. I was the youngest person to ever go there, and I was 18, and I had just
Wow.
turned 18 when I auditioned, and it was really a tough road. I mean, it's not an easy school, and it's not an easy program. So uh, I went there, and then I took some time off. I took some lessons, in between. I went back and was only there for another semester, and then I started my career professionally with, and I did a concert with Eve Queller, and I invited some managers to it, and Michael Benchetrit, who's my manager now at Cami, came to it, and he saw me and he was interested. So I signed with him shortly after that in several years ago, probably like 2012, 2013, something like that.
Okay, so you've been on the professional scene for a few years now, more than a handful, or just about a
Yeah.
handful of years, right? Isn't that funny? It seems like half the singers I talk to, their first opera that made them want to learn how to sing was either La Boheme or Carmen, and it's
I
you
know they're just
you
so
know
popular.
Yeah, it's just those.
And I'm
Those
actually
are.
doing La Boheme right now in Omaha.
I saw that. We're gonna get into it.
And another
Uh,
funny thing is
yeah,
that
go ahead.
I did La Boheme at Dallas Opera last season.
Were you?
So full circle.
Was that Marcello?
That was Chonard. This is my first
Bernard.
professional Marcello right now.
Congratulations! That's a huge
Thank
role.
you.
That's such a
Yeah,
fun
it's
role
amazing.
too. Who do you listen to for Marcello?
For
Or
Marcello, well, baritones in general, probably my favorite ones are Leonard Warren, George London, Lawrence Tibbett, Robert Merrill.
the
I
big
love those
ones?
guys.
Yeah.
I actually have this recording of Bohème with Richard Tucker and Bidou Sayao, and it's from the Met in the 50s. And the baritone, I cannot remember his name right now, but it's like something Italian.
Is it
But
Panerai or?
no, this is long, long ago.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Oh yeah,
It's like
Panerai was 70s,
Valentino's.
80s, 70s.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's an amazing recording. It's the fastest Bohème tempos you'll ever hear in your life. So it's
Oh yeah.
sprightly and wonderful.
Uh-huh. Yeah, as opposed to Carrie Ann, which tends to be quite slow. Who I
Yeah.
love listening to Bohem. That famous
Hmm.
Pavarotti, me being a tenor, the Pavarotti uh Frenny Carrie Ann recording is just,
Hmm.
for me, it doesn't get much better than that. So before we get too deep into this, I want to give everyone a chance to hear you. This is the first video on your website. If you go to Stephen how do you pronounce your last name? LaBrie?
Yeah.
LaBrie.
LaBrie.
Is it? Yeah, LaBrie. Okay. Yeah, if you go to stephenlabrie.com, it's the first video on there. This is from Die Tote Stadt. I already have it open, so I'm not reading it. Is that right? Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, so we're just gonna hear like the last, about the second half of it. So it's about 3 minutes, but it's important to hear. I mean, just it's so smooth. It's and looking at you as well, like it's you are a good looking guy and you're in really good shape. So we're going to talk about that as well, because one thing, and one of my old teachers used to say is like, oh, don't ever do sit-ups because if you have a six-pack, you're going to lose all your support. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, because you've got a washboard. So I'm really curious to see that. But if you watch this video, you can see your concentration on breathing, or at least that you're getting nice, low, full, relaxed breaths and stuff. Anyway, so I'm going to play it. If you have access to a computer, you want to go away from the live stream, feel free to do that and watch the video and come on back. But anyway, here it is.
Ein Wehen, es träumt sich
Wow. Bravo, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah. So there's a few things going on in there I want to talk about first before we get to this, which is like, when was this? Was this from the George Londons this year?
Yeah, it was late February, I think.
So this is a fairly recent example of your
Yeah.
singing in the scheme of things.
Hmm.
So before we get to this point, I want to know, did you ever have any hurdles technically, like serious ones that you had to get over? Did you have to learn how to sing high notes? Did you have to learn how to float piano singing, where your low notes always there? Can you talk about any hardships you may have gone through growing up with your voice?
Well, I'll get really personal. I actually had a hemorrhage on my vocal cords at one point.
Wow.
And it wasn't from singing, it was from sneezing. And I know exactly the moment that it happened. And I sneezed, and then I was like, oh, that was weird. And then throughout that day, I wasn't singing. I was just in the chorus of a show at AVA, and the chorus was Capriccio. And so the scene for singing is like, 2 seconds long. I mean, we weren't even rehearsing it. We were rehearsing moving around a bunch of scenery and things like that, because we were just mostly used as stagehands. And throughout the day, in talking to people, my voice I was losing it. And so because of that, like, for like the next month, I had a hole in my voice and I couldn't figure out why. And so then I went to the voice doctor, and he was like, oh, you have a hemorrhage, you need to go on vocal rest. So I went on vocal rest for a couple weeks, and then I didn't sing for another week after that. And then I started singing again, and I was healed, but I just felt like it wasn't the same. And so I had to like relearn how to sing after that. And then, and I just also decided that I really, really, really wanted to focus on technique, because I started at such a young age that I wanted to have like a really solid technique going forward, so that, I would never have to fear, sounding bad. I also went through a period of time right after that where, since singing felt weird and different, I started pushing a lot. And I started getting some really bad reviews, and I knew I was sounding bad, but no one's going to tell you that. No one's going to, I was asking coaches and things like that, and I was like, it doesn't feel right. It doesn't sound good to me. And they were like, you're fine. And so I followed my instinct. And then of course the bad review and I thought to myself, maybe I'm being really hard on myself. Maybe it's not so bad. And the bad reviews were coming out, and I was like, no, it's bad. I
Uh-oh.
need to really like figure this out. So I decided to take a couple years off and do that.
So what were the, sounding bad as a general term? Can you be a little more specific than that? Like, what was it specifically that wasn't together?
Well, technically, my tongue was really tight, and my breath was really locked, and those things go hand in hand in my book.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just tight, and and it made singing effortful. And
Mm-hmm.
so I was putting out all this effort, but I wasn't putting out a whole lot of resonance and sound and things like that. And also, my technical background, was a little unconventional. So, I studied before I went to school. I studied with someone who didn't didn't talk about resonance, and didn't talk about breath, and didn't talk about all these things that a more conventional teacher would talk about. So I didn't know so much how to like resolve the issue.
Mm-hmm. So how did you then? What steps did you go through?
Well, I found a teacher, and who was willing to spend time, which is I think the biggest thing. And we worked on moving breath, and we worked on releasing my tongue, and we worked on support, and we worked on all of those things, open-throatedness, you know, relaxed jaw. 'Cause the other thing, I was really like tight on my jaw and really moving it, overly exaggerating the movement of it in a tight way. And so it was basically working on those type of things, you know, to like release those habits and get the breath flow moving without, you know, strain and without, you know, other things involved.
Right. Yeah. So when I watch you sing in that video specifically, you don't get the impression, A, that it sounds like you're bearing down or holding something you shouldn't be. And also, it doesn't look that way as well. It looks very natural, and especially the high floated notes, which you can see people almost like, you know, get statuesque about because they don't want to do anything that's going to interrupt the line or whatever. And you're just sort of standing there in a naturally Gastonish way. You know, I'm sure people have called you that before. And so, and as well as with low notes, a lot of times you see guys trying to, because people like the low resonance or the resonance from baritone low notes, that you see a lot of younger baritones at least try to give more on the things that they know people like. And so you see them kind of push a little bit through the low registers, I think. And you don't do that as well. It just comes very naturally from you. It seems like you have your position of optimal resonance and technical efficiency, whatever that is for you, and you're able to just give a confident posture and put a lot of your energy not only into the line of the music that you're producing, but also into the character that you're portraying. And it's just really refreshing to see someone that has both of those sides at such a kind of a strong level, where it's not like one is being sacrificed for the other, but both are actually quite strong. Did you always know, I know you started singing by yourself in the house for a while before going into high school, but was it always that you had like a strong voice, or were you gentle about it at first and then you learned how to be more open-throated later on, as you referred to?
Yeah, I mean, I was just doing what I could. And then after that, you know, after I found people who were able to help me get into this more open-throated, you know, I've always wanted to sing with my full voice, you know, and I don't want to like, you know, mosey around that. And so it's you know, singing other things, like, you know, when I was starting out, you know, singing pop music or whatever, never was quite right, because it never made me feel like I was using my instrument to the way that I felt I wanted to. And so, and also I've always had, what I was going to say also earlier in the same vein as this vocal struggle was that, you know, I've always had like a darker timbre to my voice. And especially, you know, it's less of a problem now because I'm older, but when I was a young singer and I had that darker color, everyone was so afraid of it. You know, all the coaches in my life were like trying to remove that in an unhealthy way by making me artificially brighten my voice, which is where a lot of the issues happened, because people, they have a certain idea of what things should be and they don't want to stray from that idea. And I understand that, but I also think that if someone has a quality that in their voice that is just inherently there, you know, because there's nothing I can do to make my voice sound like someone else's voice, you know. I think that quality shouldn't try to be, you know, taken out, you know. And so I feel like once I started realizing that anyone who wanted to take that away from me, not because it's something I dearly hold, but it's just something that is me, you know.
Right.
And there's nothing I can do about it to take it away. And when I try, I become ruined, you know. And so once I realized that those are the people I'm not going to go to anymore.
Yeah.
You know, those are the people that don't know me or don't understand me. And other people that do know and understand me are the ones that I, you know, the ones that want me to use my instrument in my own body are the ones that, you know, I want to latch onto. So
yeah, that's a very it seems like a very common story. I think a lot of teachers want to enforce that their students are singing bright forward vowels all the time when they're younger, and a lot of times it seems like a natural color of a student's voice will be sacrificed to achieve that, when probably the optimal resonance will come from if you just do what's natural and support correctly. And then, it doesn't matter if your doesn't sound like a perfectly bright and forward Italianate thing, because if your voice is naturally darker, it's going to have a different, it's going to influence the color of the vowels, and it's going to be in a better resonant position if it's, is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah. And, the thing is, I feel like a lot of it came from coaches, not teachers, but actually coaches who, are great, and they're necessary. But, if you have a bunch of them, a lot of cooks in the kitchen telling you things, but they're not telling you how, then that's, I'm not putting responsibility on anyone else but myself, because I was the one who listened. But, I think that the moral of the story is maybe I shouldn't have gone back.
Yeah. Yeah.
But so,
but it's going to be, isn't it? I mean, haven't you heard stories of singers, they go see a conductor somewhere on the other side of the world for a show, and the conductor says, oh, you need to sing this brighter, or, oh, you need to sing this one way, or whatever. And they're not a singer. They don't know how to do it. And haven't you heard of people going through stories like that? I mean, the best example, I think, was I went to Manus in New York, and do you know the tenor Young Hoon Lee? No, he's a Korean tenor, but he's singing all over the place. He's not super well known, but he went to well, I won't say what the opera house is, but he was singing a Verdi opera, and the conductor did just that. And he called our teacher and was sort of distressed about it. I don't know how to sing this any other way. And the teacher said, just go to the conductor the next day, say you worked on it, and do it exactly the same. And he did it exactly the same. And the conductor said, bravo, bravo, good job. Because when it comes down to it, the show has to go on. Right. And, a lot of times people just want to hear that, you're trying to, so
into consideration.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so smile and nod and say, yes, maestro.
Right. Well, that's exactly it. And I think, the older I get and the more experience I get, it makes me realize that I have certain qualities to offer. And there's a reason why I was hired for this job. And those are the qualities I want to bring out. And, all the people who want to change those qualities, or take them away because they have an idea in their head of how it should be, they, well, learn to love me.
Yeah.
Because I'll accommodate until I can't anymore. And then once I can't accommodate anymore, then I'll just do it my way. And they'll be like, I never thought of it like that. Maybe that's great. I think that the thing is that you just have to try to be great. And try to do your best, and do your best with what you have to offer, and it'll change their minds. I go through it all the time. I show up somewhere and there's all these opinions, and then like after a couple of days of staging and hearing me more, then they're like, I like what you did there. So then I start getting all of the control back of my voice and what I want to give.
Yeah. So I've heard advice from coaches, for example, when you get your professional gigs, when your schedule starts to get full, it's not so much your voice. Yes, people hear your voice and you're going to get hired, but to get rehired, you have to be a great colleague, have a great work ethic, and those things, right? To actually do the work that is required, not to just coast in on your talent, which is great, but it's also clear that you have to work very hard to get to that level. Now, when you go in to rehearsal, do you have any strategy, like say you want to perform a role musically your own way that's maybe not exactly as written? I'm not talking about taking cuts or anything, but maybe you're going to do a portamento here that's not written, or so forth. And do you have any strategies, like the first sing through with the conductor, I'm going to stick to what's written on the page and then politely suggest I'd like to try something? Or do you just go in there and sing it the way you want to sing it first time through?
That's a really good question. I think that what I do is I just do it how I want, and then they tell me what they don't like it, or if they like it or they don't like it. And then if they don't like it, I take it out. And then if I feel like it's so necessary that I need to have it, then I'll like just start inching it back in until they don't notice or they like it, you know. But I don't.
I
I'm
like
not
that.
super controversial when it comes. I try to really follow what's on the page, so I don't really do anything that's so controversial. You know, I do. I'm a portamento singer. I love portamentoing, and you know, in Bohème here in the Act 4 duet, I was having them all over the place, and you know, and also but we had a music rehearsal later on, maybe like, you know, a couple days ago actually, and we've been here for 3 weeks already, so we had an additional one, so that when we get with the orchestra, we're all straight with what we want, you know, what Maestro wants and what we want to do and all that stuff. And there were, in the duet, there were a couple of rallentandos that I wanted more of, and so I asked him for that, and then in turn he asked me to take out some of the portamenti that I had been doing, and you know, I was fine. It was okay, you know, and it doesn't mean that like eliminated. They're just so small that they're not as noticeable, you know.
Right. Yeah. Portamentos are fun to sing if you're good at doing them. And one thing that sorry, just bang this. But one thing that I notice you do really well, you know, things you have to work on as a singer to make sure that legato is ever present, is, you know, making sure that when you shift from like forte to piano, or you have a diminuendo on something, or, you know, a crescendo, whatever, that your vibrato sort of keeps going through that it doesn't get hitched as you kind of switch from one sort of resonance to the other. Was that something that was easy for you to figure out? When I listen to your piano, it seems like, you know, there's some singers where they go to that color and it seems like it's disconnected from the rest of their voice. Like they almost go to a falsetto type of a thing at times, and yours seems fully connected. It still is, you know, a darker color or a softer color or a softer volume, whatever you want, but it doesn't, it seems like it's fully connected, it's fully supported. You hear that that typical like subglottal pressure, I guess, is the only way I know how to describe it, you know, that's inherent. Like, is that something you developed over time, or is that something that just kind of worked from the beginning? Because you show it off so much in that piece and you do it really well.
You know, I really work on all of those things a lot, you know, and especially when I'm preparing to do something, you know, and I knew that the tonsilite was something, you know, I don't actually sing quietly that much, because, you know, as a baritone, it's not really called upon you to do as much as it is, you know, to float high notes and stuff like that, as it is another voice type. You know, like even like a trill, like how many trills are there in the baritone repertoire? You know, there's like one in the Count's aria, a couple, you know, in maybe some bel canto or Verdi arias, but not that many. So anyway, it's just something that, like, you know, I strongly believe that singing is about breath movement and about, you know, keeping the flow going. And so when I'm doing that, you know, it's all just controlling that breath freedom and that breath movement, you know.
So there's no like shift or anything that happens in the throat. It's just making sure that keeps moving.
Yeah, it's just making sure it keeps moving. And, you know, I try not to put too much importance in like passagios and things like that, because I want it to feel even, and I don't want it to be like, okay, now I'm E flat, so now I have to, you know, cover this, and, you know, I try to be just like even and let my voice cover on its own when it wants to, and things like that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a huge fan of that. I don't, you know, just talking about covering, especially like the tenor voice, there are sort of two ways. If people are hard and fast about covering, they're either going to approach it like, regardless of how big my voice is, and F always has to be open, and then F sharp I'm going to cover, or they're a really bright voice and maybe they need to cover on a G and keep the F sharp open, and they still kind of cover a bit too low as well. I'd much rather hear your approach where it's just going to do what it's going to do, and it's going to stay even, and I'm never going to spread anything. It's just going to start, you know, it may cover quite low, you know, for a tenor, like to cover on an E flat would be pretty low, or even a D natural, which we hear sometimes. Now, but where, I mean, is your voice, does it kind of turn around E flat, E? Is that kind of a typical baritone?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Sometimes, in certain situations, I sing an E open.
Yeah, sure.
As long I feel like, it's fine as long as I'm not screaming it, and as long as I'm moving the breath and approaching it in kind of a open way.
Yeah, yeah. So this theme of openness is something you keep coming back to. Is that
Well, when I say openness, I really mean open-throated.
right?
I'm
So
I'm not talking about open vowel as, I'm talking about like open-throated and well, I guess I was when I sing an E open.
well, I mean, yes, but
As
yeah,
in not covered.
yeah, open
Singer
throated.
lingo is so weird because it's so, one word open means so many things.
And it probably means a different thing to every person a little bit. So a lot of these interviews are just like defining, what does your singer lingo mean to you?
Yeah.
Um, so, for example, what if you had to actually explain what an open-throated sound is in any terms you want to? Could you just explain that a little bit?
Well, I think that it just means, you take in a breath and you're relaxed and your throat is open. It's a sensation, there's no pulling, there's no closing off, there's no tightness, there's just openness. And then you sing, and then throughout your register, you know, from the bottom to the top, it's just in one open column, and you sing through that column.
Do you find that in different areas of your one register that you need to work to keep it open, or you just kind of take a breath, it stays there, and you go, no matter where you are?
Well, every day is different. And that's the thing with, it's a constant journey and you never arrive anywhere. That's the concept.
Right.
The concept is that, and it should be easy and it shouldn't be brain surgery. It's not rocket science. But some days it feels like rocket science because, yesterday I was great and I wake up today and I'm like, why does my throat feel like tight? Or why isn't my breath moving? Or, and then you have to figure out how to resolve it.
Hmm.
Maybe the answer is today is not a good day.
Yeah, exactly. I just need to concentrate a little more.
But because I'm such a perfectionist that, I work at it until I find the answer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, other than when you had a vocal hemorrhage and you couldn't really work through that in the short term, um, have there been any other sort of instances where you just weren't able to find a solution that day during your professional career?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly during practice days because, I feel like when I have a performance, a lot of times, um, I just kick into this other gear and I don't worry about it, and then it just happens. But during practice days, when when I'm in a practice room, I'm just like, it's just like, okay, now what is it? Am I pushing my breath forward? Is there not enough space? Is there too much space? Am I on my tongue? Am I, not supporting enough? You go through these things, and then sometimes you find the answer immediately, and other times the answer doesn't come to you for, a day or two.
Hmm. Okay, so I want to start talking to you about fitness and working out because you don't tend to see a lot of opera singers who are in as good of shape as you are. Um, so has fitness always been a part of your life or a hobby of yours, or are you just naturally look the way you do?
I woke up like this.
Yeah.
No,
Hashtag.
I actually didn't start working out until like 2010, and the reason was because I was doing this opera at Gotham Chamber Opera called Puss in Boots, El Gato con Botas,
Mhm.
and and they had emailed me when they said that they were going to hire me, that there was going to be a shirtless scene in it, and then I freaked out. So I was like, but I hate my body.
I'm not a bear hunk yet.
Right. So I was at Glimmerglass that summer, and it was, Glimmerglass is like the longest program. It's like 3 months. And so I just started working out then. So I would be ready for I guess we started performing in October that year. And, it's like anything, it has its good days and its bad days. I'm not, of course, it's a journey. I'm never where I want to be. I think that what I also did was when I started to relearn to sing, and get rid of all those habits, I started working out at the same time. So I wanted them to be something that went hand in hand, and that not were dependent on each other, because not like if I don't go to the gym I can't sing today, but I also wanted it to be something that it was like, I don't want to feel like if I start working out my singing goes in the toilet.
Right.
I want it to feel like something where I can work out and have this as part of my life, and I can sing well too.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's had okay, do you feel like because you're a strong guy, you have a strong voice, or that those are mutually exclusive concepts?
I think that they, it's hard to say. I mean, I definitely think that my voice comes from all my practicing. I don't think that it's from being strong or working out, but I don't think that working out has hurt it in any way, or like shaped it, because I also used to have this concept of like that I couldn't do abs, or I couldn't, work on my core. But the problem was that I was never working on core. I don't like to call it, well, I call it abs in more of a jest way, but I like to think of it more as core, because it's a more of an important body part. And I was doing all this, I was doing back, I was doing chest, I was doing arms and legs and stuff like that, but I wasn't doing any core. And so I started having back issues because there was an unevenness, and you can't do that. You have to be even throughout your body. And I didn't know that at the time. And so I got with a trainer at one point, and he was like, well, you have to do core. You can't do back and then not do core. And I was like, oh, that's a concept that I never knew. And, I was like, well, I don't want to do some of these sit-ups. I want to do hanging things because I don't want to strain my neck and all these things. And so I started working on it, and I realized that it actually didn't really hurt my singing in any way. So
shocker.
But there are people who don't work out at all and they're tight. So it's not, if to say working out leads to tightness, but what about all the people who don't work out and are tight?
You hear so I know it's just something that it's a myth. I mean, you hear it so much in conservatories, like, oh, don't do abs, don't do sit-ups, don't work out your core because you're going to lose your ability to support, or support will be different. I understand, that change doesn't typically happen in a rapid fashion, but I understand maybe someone who, a woman who gets pregnant and then has her, who has a child, right? They go from carrying all that extra weight by having another human inside of them to then not. I'm sure that supporting probably feels different because they lose so much weight so rapidly. Or for someone else who gets gastric bypass or something like that. But working on your abs isn't going to be like you have a 6-pack tomorrow or next week or something.
Oh my God. Yeah. Or ever.
Oh, the struggle is real. Yeah.
The struggle is real. Oh my God. I've been working on it forever and I still don't have a 6-pack. So, don't worry. I know people who are like, I don't want to work out hard because I don't like the bulky look. And I'm like, you're not going to be the bulky look. Don't worry. It doesn't happen like that.
Yeah, exactly.
You have to work out really hard.
They're like afraid of lifting heavy weights once, and then because I think
lifting heavy weights, every once in a while is not going to make you bulky. I've been trying to build muscles for years and it's not happening. So,
Yeah. So what does like your routine look like? Are you a runner? Do you do CrossFit? Are you just like are you a gym rat? Like what's your deal?
I don't do a lot of cardio because I don't like it. But I go through periods of time where I'm like, I run a lot. Like I was in St. Louis this summer, and I was staying at an apartment right next to the zoo and this big park, and so I'd go running every morning because that's fun. I don't love the treadmill, so it's hard for me to have motivation to do that. And anyway, but I do mostly like weightlifting and stuff like that. I don't have an athletic background. I wasn't an athlete when I was a kid. I never did sports. I never did anything like that. All my brothers, stepbrothers, and my cousin were all weightlifters and all these things when they were young, and I never was. I was always one that like didn't do it.
So when you started that process, did you like go to them for advice on what you should do first, or did you just kind of like Google?
No, yeah. I mean, I had a friend who's a dancer, and he taught me some moves. at the gym, like some lifts and things like that. And that's where my foundation was. And he taught me all the basic ones. And then after that, I would get like a Muscle Fitness magazine and I would see what they were doing in there. And then I would do that. And if there was like, a lot of times you look at those things and it says like a certain lift and then it has a name and you're like, what's that? And then you YouTube it, and then I figure out on YouTube what it looks like. And again, with lifting weights, I think technique is really important. So you don't want to do anything. I started from a standpoint of lifting really lightly, being in a gym full of muscle heads and like lifting really light weights because I didn't want to hurt myself, and feeling like ashamed of it. And then at some point, no longer being that way because I built up to a point where I didn't have to lift really, really light weights anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's been a pleasure at least to get your ideas on singing. Open-throatedness is such a general concept, but it's important that you were willing to share, your version of that idea and how it works for you, because it is working. Whatever it is you're doing is working. And, you give great performances and your schedule's booked at least. So that's incredible.